One snowy Christmas Eve back in 1945, a fire broke out and destroyed the Sodder residence in Fayetteville, West Virginia, in the United States of America. At the time, the property was occupied by George Sodder, his wife Jenny, and 9 of the 10 children. During the fire, George, Jenny, and 4 of the 9 children escaped with their lives. To this day, the bodies of the other 5 children have never been found. The surviving Sodder family believed for the rest of their lives that the 5 missing children survived the fire. Yes, I said survived, and we will find out why. The Sodder family never rebuilt the house. The Sodder family never rebuilt the house following the fire. Instead, they levelled the site and transformed it into a memorial garden dedicated to celebrating the lives of their lost children. This mystery has so far remained unsolved for more than 70 long years and still remains unsolved today. Greetings, unexplained parapeeps. My name is Mark Hughes. I am a psychic medium, an eclectic Wicca, and an Acturian starseed, who every now and then will take the lid off his flying saucer to take a good look round at the unexplained things that happened on this and other universes, if you know what I mean. Tonight I'm going to tell you the mysterious story about the Sodder children. I will give you the necessary disclaimer. This story is a tale that sadly involves children and may prove upsetting to some. You listen at your own discretion. Also, all opinions and comments are strictly my own, but the facts still remain. I also apologise if I pronounce Fayetteville incorrectly. My English, although it is my first and only language, does need some elocution training at times, but hey, I'm an alien, remember? In fact, we all are, aren't we? So, back to the story. During the 1950s, the Sodder family came to doubt that their children had actually died. So much so that the family put up a billboard at the site of the fire along the State Road 16 with pictures of the missing 5 children, offering a reward of $5,000 for information that would bring closure to the case. It remained standing until shortly after Jenny Sodder's death in 1989. The surviving members of the family were George Sodder, who was born in Tula, Sardinia, Italy in 1895. He immigrated to the United States when he was only 13 years old. He was very private when it came to explain why he left his homeland. Eventually, he found work on the railroads in Pennsylvania as a general labourer. After a few years, he took on more permanent work as a driver in Smithers, West Virginia, where he eventually started his own trucking company, initially hauling fill dirt and coal to other construction companies. Jenny Cipriani became George's wife in 1922, a storekeeper's daughter working in Smithers who had also immigrated to the United States from her childhood Italian home. The surviving children and ages at the time of the fire were John Sodder, aged 23, Joe Sodder, aged 21, who was actually away with the US military at the time of the fire, Marion Sodder, aged 17, George Sodder Jr., aged 16, and Sylvia Sodder, aged at only 2 years old. All were plagued for the rest of their lives with the mystery of what really happened to their missing brothers and sisters that night. The missing children were Maurice Sodder, aged 14, Martha Lee Sodder, aged 12, Louis Sodder, aged 10, Jenny Irene Sodder, aged 8, and lastly, Betty Dollar Sodder, aged 6. Did the other children die in the fire? Were they murdered? Or were they kidnapped? Let's look into this further. It being Christmas Eve, 5 of the Sodder children, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny and Betty, asked if they could stay up late. Marion, 17, the eldest daughter, had been working at a dime store in downtown Fayetteville and she had surprised 3 of her younger sisters with new toys she had bought for them as Christmas gifts. Their mother eventually agreed to let them stay up late, which doesn't really surprise me, as anybody who has had young children know what a battle it is trying to get them to bed on time, especially on Christmas Eve or indeed at most times. So, Jenny made the children promise that they would lock the front door properly before going upstairs to bed. At 12:30 a.m, the telephone rang, waking Jenny, who then went downstairs to answer it. The caller was a woman whose voice Jenny did not recognise, asking for a name of a person she did not know, and all with the added sound of laughter and clinking of glasses in the background. Jenny explained to the caller she had a wrong number, hung up, and went back to bed. Jenny later recalled the woman had a weird laugh. On her way back to bed, she noticed that the lights were still on, and the curtains were not drawn. 2 things the children normally attended to before going to bed when they stayed up later than their parents. Marion had fallen asleep on the living room couch, so Jenny assumed the other children who had stayed up later had gone back to bed up in the attic where they slept. She closed the curtains and turned out the lights. Then, as Jenny made her own way back up to bed, she noticed the door was still unlocked and assumed the children had just forgotten to lock it before they went up to bed. She locked the door herself and went back upstairs. Half an hour later, at 1 a.m, Jenny was again awakened, this time by the sound of an object hitting the house roof with a loud bang, followed by a rolling noise. And no, it wasn't Santa Claus before you say it. After hearing nothing further, at around 1:30 a.m, she went back to sleep. Another half hour later, at 2 a.m, she woke up yet again for the 3rd time, but this time to the smell of smoke. She got up. She found that the room George used for his office was on fire, with the flames focused on and around the telephone line and fuse box. Jenny woke her husband, who in turn woke his elder sons, John and George, while she woke Marion and Sylvia. Once outside, the horrified parents looked back to see the house was now fully up in flames. They frantically tried to save their 5 other children, who were all still trapped inside. The room where the children slept was in the attic, so George, in bare feet, ran to get the ladders to hopefully make an escape route for them via the bedroom window. However, when George ran to get to the garage for the ladders, where they were usually kept, he noticed they were missing, despite knowing he had definitely put them back after using them only the other day. Later, during the investigation, they found the ladders, which had been thrown into a ditch. Certainly not something George would have done. There was also a water barrel near to the house that could have been used to extinguish the fire, but due to the weather, it was frozen solid. An interesting bit of weather trivia for you, actually. The temperature for Western Virginia during Christmas 1945 was minus 20 degrees centigrade. So yeah, that's cold. Forgetting the ladders, George decided to start one of his trucks, drive to the side of the house and use this to climb up to the window. He tried both of his trucks and neither would start. Again, they had both been working fine the previous day. George's arm was by now in pretty bad shape from smashing the windows trying to save his children, even though there was now no hope for their survival. Efforts to find help and rescue the children were thwarted at every turn. Both George and Jenny tried to call the fire department, but the phone lines were not working. Marion then ran to her neighbour's house to call the Fayetteville Fire Department, and a driver on a nearby road, who had also seen the flames, called the fire department from a nearby tavern. But they too were both unsuccessful, either because they could not reach the operator or because the phones turned out to be broken as well. Remember, people, This was way before the days of mobile phones. How on earth did we survive back then? At last, one friendly neighbour decided to drive into town and find the fire chief directly. But although the fire department was only 2.5 miles away from the Sodder family home, the fire trucks did not arrive on the scene until 8 a.m, a full 7 hours after the fire had started. I'll repeat that. A full 7 hours, people, after the fire had started. Frustrated and in complete distress, the 6 Sodder family members who had escaped the fire had no choice other than to run over had no choice other than over the next 45 minutes to watch the house burn down and collapse to the ground, with the assumption that their brothers and sisters had perished in the blaze. Due to the fire department being low on manpower, and because of the war, they relied on individuals calling each other. Chief F.J. Morris said the next day, and I quote, that the already slow response was further hampered by my inability to drive the fire truck, unquote. Meaning that he had to wait until someone was available who could drive the fire truck. When they arrived at the scene, the firefighters, one being Jenny's brother, could do little but look through the ashes that were left in what was the Sodder's basement. The Sodder family had expected to find whole skeletons remaining of their 5 missing children, but by 10 a.m, Fire Chief Morris told them that they had not found any bones as might have been expected, if the other children had been in the house as it burned. According to another report, they did find a few bone fragments and internal organs, but they chose not to tell the family. It had been noted by modern fire professionals that the search was cursory at best. Nevertheless, the fire chief believed that the 5 children accounted for had died in the fire, suggesting that the fire had, in fact, been hot enough to burn their bodies completely. Following the brief search amongst the rubble, and as it was now Christmas Day, the fire department then postponed the investigation. Why would they do that? This was another heartbreaking moment for George and Jenny as they desperately searched the ruins themselves for the children's remains. A strange fact, when a maintenance worker arrived at the house after the fire, it was discovered that the phone lines had been cut rather than burnt, as they had originally assumed. And again, strangely enough, in the previous October, a couple of months before the fire, a life insurance salesman had threatened George that his house would go up in smoke and his children would be destroyed. George thought that the salesman was just angry as he'd failed to make a sale. However, with the events that followed, it seemed that he'd turned out to be more than accurate. Was there more to this case than anyone had first thought? Also, an electrician who visited the house prior to the fire warned George that their faulty fuse box could cause a severe fire. But the electric company reassured George that the house was perfectly safe and that the electrician who mentioned the fault was more than likely looking to charge privately for doing extra work that wasn't needed. As a result, George never pursued the matter any further. Money was tight, as it was with such a large family. Following an inquest by the fire department, it was discovered that the fire had started in one of the basement rooms due to faulty wiring from Christmas lights. Ironically, the insurance salesman who had threatened George back in October was one of the jurors during the inquest. The children's deaths were ruled accidental. I'm still not convinced by that conclusion. As the family slowly began to rebuild their lives, they started to question all the official findings about the fire. They wondered why, if it had been caused by an electrical problem, why had the Christmas lights remained on throughout the early stages of the fire, when the power should have gone out first? The family themselves found the ladder that had been missing from the side of the house on the night of the fire. It was at the bottom of an embankment 75 feet or 23 metres away from the property. Why? How? When